Welcome to this year's annual Cumberland Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association Convention. We are super excited to have our good friend, Dr. Denis Onieal, here to kick off this year's convention. And I don't think this man needs an introduction or for us to read his bio because everybody knows him because he's been such a big part of the fire service and many of our lives. So Dr. Onieal, I would love if you would share with our audience today about moving towards the future and what advice that you have for our association to succeed.
Dr. McDonald, one of the challenges that I always had at the Fire Administration, whether it was at the National Fire Academy or at the United States Fire Administration when I was deputy, was dealing with change and constantly adapting to changes in the environment, changes in student needs, changes in the federal government, budgeting processes, hiring practices. It was just this constant change. And one of the things that I realized early on was that for us to survive as an organization at the Fire Administration, we had to continually adapt to change. When I was frequently dispatched out on national disasters, again, we had to change and adapt to the environment that we found ourselves in. We couldn't control the environment. So one of the things that I developed a little bit was a little bit of a talk about how you can be a success dealing with change. And it needs some understanding the fact that you're solely dependent upon your preparation for tomorrow because yesterday's war stories aren't going to cut it anymore. It isn't yesterday anymore. That your experiences that you've experienced up until now are not going to help you because many of the things that you're going to face have never been faced by anyone before. No other organization has ever faced it. And finally, the rate of change is accelerating at a pace that it's almost impossible to maintain. Your head spins when you see what's going on. Now, if you look at some of the things that have happened in our society, in music and in publishing and in colleges and universities and newspapers, and when was the last time you got a photograph in your hand or sent or received a handwritten letter? Those are all changes that we've experienced in our lifetime in the last 15 or 20 years. And when we talk about survival and change, a lot of people like to refer back to Darwin, who wrote a book called The Origin of the Species. And everyone thought that Darwin said that only the strong survive, but Darwin never said that. What Darwin actually said was that the organisms that are most responsive to change are the ones that survive. And if you're dealing with a changing environment and you're not adapting to that changing environment, you're going to go out of business or you're going to cease to exist. Now, everyone thinks that alligators died off because they were old. But the reality of it is that the alligators and the dinosaurs existed at the same time. The paleontologists will tell us that they existed at the same time, about 50 million years ago. But something happened to the Earth. Then the dinosaurs failed to adapt. But the alligators continued to change and adapt. And today, there's 2 television shows about people that kill alligators. They're still around. And what I like to tell people is that if you don't like change, you're going to hate extinction. And that is what has happened to big organization like Sears Roebuck. Sears Roebuck invented the mail order business, and they're almost out of business. Empty Sears stores are now becoming warehouses for Amazon because they beat them at the warehouse business. The company that controlled the photography industry for the entire 20th century, Kodak, is practically out of business. Now, Kodak invented digital photography, but they just never thought that it was going to become as popular as it did. So we've got to look at our fire service, the ones that we love so much, and ask ourselves, how is our environment changing and what are we doing to adapt to those changes? What are the things that are people who are coming into the organization, or fresh blood coming into the organization? What are they looking for? What is motivating them to join? And If they're not coming into your organization, you need to be asking yourself, why aren't they coming in like they once did? The environment is changing. You need to adapt. Now, when I was at the fire administration, most people know that I was a superintendent of the National Fire Academy. And one day, and then the next day, our good friend Glenn Gaines suddenly passed away, and I was asked to fulfill his responsibilities. But once that happened, and I looked at my age and my career and realizing that I was going to have to be dealing with a lot of change, what I wanted to do was institute a program of succession planning. So when I vacated the position, we hired a superintendent. We brought a superintendent in, Tanya Hoover. She did a great job as superintendent. But what was going on behind the scenes was that I was breaking her in that job. I was there with her every day. Whenever I kept hands off in terms of management, but if she had an issue or a problem to deal with, well, probably I dealt with it in the past. And between Dr. Kirby Kiefer and myself, we got her up and running pretty quickly. And then about a year before I was going to retire, I made a notice. I called my boss. I said, look, I'm going to retire in January of 2020. I'm giving you plenty of time. Let's do this nice and smooth. Let's hire the right people to come in. And we advertised for the job. It just so happened that Tanya Hoover, once again, did remarkably well in the competition for that job. And she was promoted to deputy. And then we turned right around and hired or advertised for a superintendent. So by the time I wanted to get all of this done before the 2020 election, which was November. And believe it or not, the day after the election, we had everything locked down in place. We had the superintendent hired, the deputy fire administrator hired, and the following 3 months later in January, I retired. But that was because we worked hard looking forward to bring people into the system. And so in the volunteer fire service, I would ask people to think about doing the same kinds of things. If you're the one always going to national meetings, well, maybe see if somebody younger would like to go to a national meeting. If there's a national meeting in a place that, I don't know, serves early bird special restaurants, maybe go someplace where there's a park for kids or a Disney World or something like that would interest somebody with a family to attend these kinds of conferences. So in dealing with the change, we don't have much of a choice whether we're going to deal with it or not. The choice we have is whether we're going to control it or not. So, that's the kind of information that I pass along.
Thank you, Dr. Onieal, for those wise words. I think the information that you shared today is something that our members and our leaders can take away. And as we start to plan for our future, we can implement those strategies. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being such a good friend to Cumberland Valley. We really appreciate your support.
I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. Thanks.